I just experienced the absolute best range day ever. In the history of armed ASMR with family who has recently decided to come here and visit. That being my mom and brother and sister. Even though my sister did not come to the range, myself and my good friend, my mom and my brother, we all had what I can only describe as the best range day ever. Not only that, but it was my brother and mom's very first time ever shooting, which is awesome. And we were able to make it all happen on my friend's property, which means a private range of a great distance, at least compared to most of the public ranges around here. Can probably get out to 300 yards, or maybe even more at this private area. But just experiencing that time shooting all kinds of different guns and calibers. I got to shoot a 5.7 for the first time, which is an awesome handgun that essentially shoots a rifle caliber, very fast projectile. If you know the P90, it shoots the same cartridge as that P90 does. And we shot some of that binary explosive. That was fun. Busted some clays with the shotgun. Shot the AK and just all sorts of fun. And of course now comes the massive cleaning operation of cleaning the firearms afterwards. But it was totally fun. Many genuine laughs and smiles. And it's worth mentioning here because it is the heart of armed ASMR, the idea of going out and enjoying yourself with the freedom to have fun and just simple recreation, learning fun skills that have practical uses and all of that. Now, it got me thinking because we were talking over there and we got onto the topic of the top 5, that whole idea of the top 5 favorite or top dream guns. I will say after shooting that 5.7 that I'm really sold on it. I am convinced that that very well may be the best handgun out there, period. And it's great because the P90 or PS90 is also quite the combination, even if they are amazing on their own. We got onto this subject though, and I compiled a list of my top 5 dream guns. I absolutely love the shooting, the quality of it, even in terms of accuracy, and I just remember when my friend and I would shoot at even distances where some people for handguns mostly would consider, oh, that's a long range, and we used to shoot it, say, 15, 20 yards, and we would miss a lot, but yesterday really just showed how improved our shooting has gotten, because we are, with handguns, it's not even a challenge to, I wouldn't say rapidly, but in a not very slow pace, just rep out shots at, 35, 40 yards, just easy. And that's awesome. It's also awesome because my brother is really young, and when I was his age, I was still going over the summers to this exact same property, which that's awesome because the property is beautiful. But when I was his age, just much younger, I would only shoot the 22s because I was scared of the recoil of anything else. And it was cool seeing my brother shoot most of the guns except for the 12 gauge and like the AK or 357, but he handled the 9mm, 5.56. He loved the 22. That was very cool, especially his first time shooting, and he was making hits. I remember we had a hanging bowling pin at, he was hitting that at easily over 100 yards with the 10-22, which was great, and making hits on steel plates and everything, it was just so much fun. But this idea of the top 5 dream guns, I did settle on making a list which I attempted to put as best as I can in order of number 1 being the one that I want the most, and then down to the 5th that I want the most. This is also assuming that I have access to the proper range for these guns, as well as the ammo, just a supply of ammo. Also, I will be disregarding, as they should, no matter what, I will be disregarding gun laws in general and just naming guns, even if they would technically be very hard to get. I'm just going to say them anyway, because these are the dream guns, and I'm not a pro gun law person, so I don't advocate following them anyway. At your own risk, of course. But I have, for number 1 and number 2, these are not specific. their kind of their ideas of guns, that I have not configured a perfect setup for. The rest are specific, but these are just ideas. And let's start with number one. If I can just pull a gun out of the air and have it of any choice, and I guess technically this would be an NFA item in its configuration, but I say a dedicated, professional, high quality grade night vision rifle setup, which would include a silencer and various aiming assist devices. I believe like a PEC 15, which is a laser, I believe, or even a combination of laser and maybe rangefinder, but I know at the very least it's an infrared laser system, as well as a suppressed, probably AR platform rifle, and that also includes a helmet system with probably a PVS 14, which is a monocular night vision setup. And if I could pull anything out, I have access to ammo, a range, and this equipment, the very first thing I would do is a night vision setup, and a quiet one at that. I would imagine it would be either in 5.56 or maybe 300 blackout would be a good option, especially for suppressed shooting. And the idea of having a very quiet, effective firearm that can be used during the night, during the essentially half of the day that most of your other firearms are not necessarily usable unless you use a flashlight or ambient light, which people have managed, but having a dedicated setup, the complete kit, including the night vision, monocular, and all of that. I even think so much about just walking through the woods with night vision, and I don't necessarily have a romantic view of the system where, by my understanding, having never worn any type of sophisticated night vision, I always hear it described as basically just imagine taking a roll of toilet paper, sticking it up to your eye, and putting a green filter on it. So it's like a very narrow field of view, but I would choose that as my number one choice for a top 5 gun. Beautiful night vision setup. Feel free to tell me what your choices would be, of course, and I suppose if we're just pulling a dream gun out of the air, this would also be some type of select fire gun in the sense that it has a third position. I would say being a burst or a 3-round burst of automatic type fire. If it could have a third position for that, that's what I would choose. And having a range for that, also of course shooting suppressed, meaning not having to necessarily wear hearing protection, especially all the time. And in a situation like my friend's property, that would mean being able to shoot at night, of course, because you're not going to be disturbing people. And I think that it's just generally very cool. It would be fun to run different types of drills and that type of environment. I absolutely love that idea, and that's my number one choice. Now, on to number 2, and this is the last non-specific option that I have. And I suppose this would also break a number of gun laws, but what this is a completely homemade, probably a combination of basic metal and 3D printing, completely homemade firearm that is effective and almost even, I want to say, my own design. If I could design a firearm, I really think I could if I had the time, probably put together a nice machine gun under these magical scenarios where it's okay for me to just essentially create or grab anything out of the air that I want. I would love, at the very best, considering that this is a dream gun, one of my own design, where I essentially take basically no item that has been marketed as a firearm related product and turn it into a firearm through my own work or ideas. 3D printing, of course. I have a 2-video series at this point on 3D printing Glock 17 magazines, where it's all 3D printed except for the metal spring, which can be made on your own. So, say I took that idea, just brainstorming here, took that idea, 3D printed those magazines, and rather than buying an official Glock magazine, if I could find a way to make the spring a factory Glock spring instead of using that, if I could make my own, kind of bend my own, similar shape, and use those magazines to then design some type of maybe 9mm machine gun that has 3D printed components as well as metal components. And having the magazine taken care of like that would be a great advantage, of course, because then I would not really have to design it, but it would still be 3D printed and hand bent spring rise. I have here, I think the most common thing that people talk about, especially if they're not really aware of what they're talking about, is rifling a barrel, which people describe as this incredible feat of just, essentially, it's just not possible. How are you going to make a homemade rifled barrel? You can't do it of any quality, especially. But fairly recently, it's come to my attention that that is not true. There is a process specifically that I have actually learned from the same person who provided the 3D print files for the Glock magazine. That same person has been experimenting with this process called ECM, which is a process where you can rifle a barrel at home. And using that process, of course, part of a dream gun would probably be a rifled barrel, unless I'm talking about a shotgun. So that process, we're actually going to look and just a tiny bit of detail. I literally have just a title of an article that kind of gives a few components of it. But I watched a video on Gunstreamer of Ivan the Troll. That's the man who came out with the 3D print Glock files. And he's tested this ECM process of creating his own barrel, and he's getting great results, surprisingly great results. But what I have here, I have, first of all, this article, if we backtrack a little bit, on the PVS-14 that I mentioned, which is the night vision monocular that I would be running with my very #1 top dream gun setup, the night vision. And I have just this basic little rundown here of that monocular that we'll go into detail about. And then I'll just quickly look at the ECM rifling barrel process. But this night vision monocular here, it says the AN PVS-14 monocular night vision device MNVD, is in widespread use by the United States Armed Forces as well as NATO allies around the world. It uses a third-generation image intensifier tube and is primarily manufactured by Litton Industries, now L3 Warrior Systems, and ITT Corporation, now Harris Incorporated, formerly Excelis. It is often used hands-free, using a head harness or attached to a combat helmet such as the PASGT, or PASGT. I actually have one of those helmets. And by the way, the third gen, by my understanding, there are like plus systems, like third gen plus, second gen plus, but by my understanding there's mainly three categories: Gen 1, Gen 2, and Gen 3. And I believe all of these generations are made to this day, but it's generally Generation 1 is the lowest quality, Generation 2 is kind of the middle, and then Gen 3 is where the very high quality lies. But it can be attached to helmets such as the PASGT, the Advanced Combat Helmet, or Marine Lightweight Helmet. It can also be used as a weapons night sight. In addition, it was part of the equipment fielded in the U.S. Army's Land Warrior program. Nord Atlantic USA is the military and law enforcement distributor of the AN/PBS-14 Gen 3 auto-gated. Morovision Night Vision was the law enforcement distributor of the NEPBS-14 for ITT Excelis. And it says it's been in service from the year 2000, used by United States Armed Forces, Canadian Armed Forces, Ukrainian Armed Forces, and a weight of 316 grams, 4.5 inches long, 2.14 inches high, 2 inches wide, 40 degrees field of vision. And there's various other references here, but we'll move on now to the ECM rifling barrel process. Literally just this article here gives a very basic overview. It says DIY barrel rifling using salt water, electricity, and a 3D printed jig. And it sounds very simple, but it's truly something worth taking note of if you're looking at homemade barrels. And essentially it's using electricity. I saw Ivan use a car battery for a source of electricity, and this is kind of a gross oversimplification, but he used a 3D printed jig in the sense of basically it's like a coiled, almost like DNA helix looking piece of 3D printed material that you can coil these wires around, and if you stick that whole contraption into a barrel of salt water and then supply an electric current to those wires with the barrel around it, or if you stick that into the barrel, by my understanding that will kind of burn or make some type of rapid rusting effect of, like, essentially it comes out with rifling in the shape of that 3D printed helix type of design with lands and grooves, just like a normal barrel. So that process is quite amazing. Feel free to look at that. I know there's a full video on Gunstreamer. You might have to look at Ivan the Troll ECM tutorial or something like that. But that's number one and number two for me. A dedicated night vision setup, as well as a probably of my own design, but at the very least completely homemade, functional, I would say full auto machine gun, maybe of a pistol caliber, taking the Glock magazines, which are 3D printed. So let's move on now to number 3. If I could pull any gun out of the air, this would be the third one. This is a Select Fire Maxim 9 by Silencer Co. This is a specific gun, which I believe I first heard of when watching videos on the NFA review shoot. This is an event that I believe happens in Florida, which it's a dream of mine to go there. You just pay for the admission costs and you go in and they have manufacturer booth table setups. And I saw this, that range day is nothing but suppressed firearms, which is an awesome idea. Talk about an ASMR range day. But this is a full auto capable 9mm, I believe kind of M&P platform. It is an integrally suppressed 9mm handgun. So it is, honestly, it's everyday carryable. It is quiet. It has just great features, and it's amazing. If you are interested, I highly suggest looking at the full auto or Select Fire Maxim 9. If I could pull any gun out, I would pull that out of the air and I would carry it every day as my concealed carry option. And I even have an article here to kind of read just a little bit about it straight from the Silencer Co. website. And of course, integral suppression, I'm meaning that the silencer is kind of built into the gun and it's a very short package. So I'll just read the product overview. The Maxim 9 is the world's first integrally suppressed 9mm handgun that is holsterable and hearing safe with all types of 9mm ammunition. Shipped in its full-length configuration, so of course it does actually have multiple configurations. You can make it shorter or longer, taking various baffles apart. The Maxim 9 comes with everything the user needs to shorten the overall length by more than 1 inch. In the short configuration, the Maxim 9 remains hearing safe with subsonic ammunition. Regardless of which configuration you use, the Maxim 9 represents one of the greatest strides made in both pistol and suppressor technology. No more choosing between keeping your pistol as short as possible and enduring deafening sound, or adding a silencer and dealing with the added length and weight. Now you can have the best of all worlds with the Maxim 9. Which I think you can understand why I would absolutely love that as a range toy, as a carry option, something that can be concealed. And I have seen these full auto, which that option is a must for a dream gun. So for my very first, technically this is my very first specific gun that I can name and point out, if I could pull it out of the air and just have it, the very first gun that I could really put my hand on and point at directly is the Maxim 9, and that's number 3 in my top 5 dream guns. Next up, when I mentioned having access to the ammunition and the range, you probably thought that this is one that's going to come up, and it's a really easy choice, but it's still there for number 4. If I could pull any gun out of the air, I'm talking about a Barrett M107A1 rifle. I'm talking about a semi-auto 50 caliber 50 BMG rifle, 10 rounds of high quality material destruction capabilities. I would imagine an absolute blast to shoot, and you can really put in some work at a long distance. and there's just all different types of 50 caliber ammo that I love to try shooting this. Suppressed, may as well mention it. It would also include a silencer, which there are 50 BMG silencers on the market. It would include one of those because I would love to try that. But I have here from tombstonetactical.com, looking at it for sale right now. You can order one for, I believe it is basically $12,000. And we have from the manufacturer, Barrett M107A1 semi-automatic 50 BMG 29-inch. This one is Cerakoted flat dark earth with a bipod and a 10-round magazine. It says fed from a 10-round magazine and function on a recoil-operated design. An all-new bolt carrier group has been created, which is key to making the rifle suppressor ready from the factory. Its steel 4-port muzzle brake is engineered to work seamlessly with the quick-attach Barrett QDL suppressor. By the way, going through various searches of Arms List, which is our local guns for sale type of website, we actually did come across a Barrett for sale with this silencer on it. Every component was re-engineered to be lighter yet stronger, resulting in a 4-pound weight reduction. Features a temperature-resistant cheek piece, lightweight adjustable monopod and bipod, 24-inch scope rail with a 27 MOA taper and forward receiver capable of accepting side accessory rails. Comes with 10-round magazine, bipod, monopod, and hard carrying case. So this is something that, especially given the ammunition, I would love to have, and you could take this out to extremely long ranges, and it's a 50 BMG. I mean, it would be worth it, honestly, for no other reason than to use that one 50 caliber round that I always have in these videos, and I shake it and you can hear all the gunpowder. It's a tracer round. I want to shoot that thing one day out of a 50 BMG rifle. So now we are down to number 5. The very 5th option, and this is another specific option. If I could pull any gun out of the air, this is one that I've talked about here before, but I'm in love with it since the first time that I ever heard of its existence. And I'll let you guess before I say it. I'll say it's a 12 gauge shotgun. Do you have a guess? It is semi-auto. It is box fed or magazine fed, sometimes even drum fed. You can add a silencer to this as well. If you guessed the Fostech Origin 12, you would be correct. That is my number 5 option for a gun that I can just pull out of the air. Even if you just look up what this gun looks like, you'll kind of know what I mean, that I fell in love with it at first sight, and then I saw how you can use a 30-round drum magazine to shoot the 12 gauge ammunition through it. As far as a range toy, as far as a defensive use gun, it is truly just incredible. And I'll read even just a little bit about it here now from the guns.fandom.com, just a little information. The Fostech Origin 12 is an AK-derived shotgun chambered in 12 gauge. Although similar to the Sega shotguns in terms of receiver design and bolt group, it must be noted that it uses different components designed from the ground up. Primarily developed for use in civilian shooting sports, IPSC or 3-gun, it has gained a reputation for being a fast-firing semi-automatic shotgun. I did not actually know that it was designed for civilian use. I know that I don't believe I've seen a full auto or select fire version. I will say that the standard Origin 12 is technically considered a short-barreled shotgun in the legal terms that I don't really care about, but there's also a version of it called the Origin 12 SBV, which is essentially the same Origin 12 except it skirts around the stupid gun laws to, rather than having a stock, it uses the loophole of a arm brace where you essentially have the same gun except you go without the paperwork, etc. It says the Origin 12 is a gas-operated, semi-automatic weapon with dual gas ports located ahead of the chamber and connected with a gas block with two gas tubes running forward above the barrel for about 10 centimeters or 4 inches. At the gas block, powder gases are turned back to push on the traditional long-stroke gas piston, and a manual gas regulator is provided to adjust the gun for a wide variety of loads. The barrel and gas block are designed as a quickly detachable unit, allowing for fast and simple changes of barrel lengths and possibly calibers. So how cool is that? Typically with semi-auto shotguns, or I assume full auto as well, you typically have to run extremely powerful rounds to cycle the system, but perhaps with this you can run lighter rounds because it says that it has essentially a tunable gas system. So I'm curious as to how low, even though when you're shooting something like this, you may as well load that 30 rounds up with some turkey loads. I shot, I think, 1 or 2 rounds of 12 gauge 3-inch turkey load, which those things definitely thump quite a bit. Probably the most hardest recoiling thing I've ever shot is actually a 12 gauge 3-inch turkey shot. The weapon features a Saiga or Saiga 12 style receiver made of steel, along with a Saiga 12 style bolt group with a rotary bolt. The Origin 12 feeds from a 5, 8, or 10 round magazine, or from 20 or 30 round drums. It also features a side-folding adjustable stock and rifle-type iron sights mounted on the top Picatinny rail. So that's a little bit of information. I had a great deal of fun yesterday with the family and my friend, kind of going over what my top 5 would be, and that's what really brought this to life, this whole top 5 idea. I'm surprised. I don't believe I've ever done this before, but that is truly it. If I could design anything and just construct just an idea of if I can grab a gun out of the air, those would be the 5 that I would choose, especially with the different accessories. Like the night vision setup doesn't necessarily have to do with the gun. In fact, a lot of that really has nothing to do with the gun, but the gun's still necessary as part of that kit. And of course, assuming that I have a beautiful shooting range, that would be awesome, and ammunition availability, that 50 caliber is pretty intense. So, my friend, feel free to share what your thoughts are below. I hope you enjoyed, and please do consider supporting through the PayPal link below. I will see you again, hopefully very soon. Please go out and have a good time. Go shoot some guns and bring your family and friends along. Thank you very much, my friend.